Welcome to another edition of TCA Crossroads. I'm David Friedman, your host, and with me, I have Mr. Dave Burkus, Super
That's
Angel.
me.
How are you, Dave?
I'm doing great. It's a great day today.
I'm looking forward to this because we're flipping the script in a sense. You've had so many really great presentations that people seem to really enjoy. They got a lot out of it. Now you're going to have a chance to pepper me with questions because there's a really interesting subject that has come up. AI is so dominant now in the things that we look at and the use of AI in our products and services. And the question came up from my colleagues, how can we use AI to do due diligence?
What an interesting question. Let's delve into that one. That's a good one.
Yeah, so if now it's very simple. I mean, it would be really great if I can just throw in a pitch deck and just push a button and say, tell me if this will be the next unicorn. Unfortunately, I don't know of a system. ChatGPT doesn't know of a system. No one knows of a system that can do that. I do agree with one thing, though. If in that pitch deck it said Dave Burkus, CEO, I'll invest. I don't need to do any more due diligence. That's just throwing you a kudo because I admire you so much.
That a babe. And back at you, David. That's nice.
So we're going to go through this deck, and hopefully it'll go relatively quickly. It's not it's not the perfect answer, but it will give people time to think about how they can use ChatGPT, and that's the one that I use. I signed up for the ChatGPT 4.0 and doing due diligence for angel investing. We're going to go through it in terms of the questions you would ask, and then I'm just going to give it a score. It's just, I'm in a very good mood today, so I'm scoring pretty high. I mean, sometimes it is what it is. So the first thing I think we need to look at is what is our TCA's due diligence process. And I'm not going to go through, we have a fairly formalized process, but we come up with a due diligence report. And this is just a snapshot of some of the things we look at. So we have the company summary up on top. And then in general, we start looking at what is the summary of the deal and the recommendations for the other investors, the limited partners, the other accredited investors, to look at as they make a decision whether or not to invest in this company, either directly or through our fund, because we have those two options, or both.
The difference between green and yellow?
Yeah, so that's a good point. One of the things that I realize is that many people don't have time to read everything. And the way this is structured, there's an element which is in that called the topics. It'll say like leadership, market assessment. The other one is subordinate questions that relate to that topic. And then there's the analysis, the results, the analysis. I color coded it to say this is all good. Green means go. Yellow means there's a concern in this topic or in a subordinate topic. And red means very high caution. Doesn't mean we don't invest, but we would take that into account as we do the discussions and valuation, for example.
I like that.
Yeah, it gives people an opportunity to look at things in a very different way. I love this kind of color coding because I only want to focus on the things that go bump in the night or things that we can try to correct. Everything else I'll leave alone. I don't need to micromanage. So here are the DD elements. This, again, is pretty common across the board in most angel groups. You go through the company summary, the deal summary, whether or not it's a convertible note, a safe note, preferred, what the valuation is, what the ask is, how many rounds of financing, all that good stuff. And then you get into recommendation, which is really the crux of it. That's the end result. But we break it down into things like leadership, market assessment, product market fit, competition, technology, IP, risk impact, which is a new thing that we added over the years. We realized that we have to take a look at the risks that are involved in angel investing. It's risky enough, but what are the specific risks for that company or product? And how do we set a priori the plans to mitigate those risks? And then we get into the business model, financials, go-to-market plans, terms, and exits. Pretty comprehensive. Is that fair?
And you know that I use the Burkus method, and the Burkus method only has 4 of these tests. So it is nowhere near as complex or complete, but I can complete that method in 10 minutes, 15 minutes. How long does it take you to go through a due diligence effort when you have a committee doing this?
I'd like to tell my colleagues who I want to have help me on these due diligence projects, and participate in doing the due diligence, it only takes about a couple of hours. But we've also seen results saying that you need at least 20 hours in due diligence to really come up with a good due diligence report. So what we normally do is bring people together with requisite skills that are in maybe the business model and financials, another one on terms and deal structure, another one maybe there's an IP attorney or an IP advisor. And it would take, so we break down this 20 hours into subordinate parts. But it takes about 20 hours to do a really good job, and hopefully that answers the question. Of course, if we were to get a due diligence report through a trusted partner like Keiretsu, TIE, Frontier Angels, Sandhill Angels, whatever the other groups are that we're partnering and syndicating with, it could take a little less time. If we're the lead, it takes a little longer.
So 20 hours, including, I assume, making the report, is a long time.
Correct.
If you look at maybe 4 or 5 or 6 simultaneous efforts in due diligence for the entire group, does this scare any deal leads off when they've heard that kind of number?
Well, that was a sharp stab at my heart, because that's the problem that we have, which is exactly the reason why I started looking at how AI can reduce the time and improve the decision making. All right, so let's take a look. The executive summary, that's just the summarization of all the things that you put in, the recommendations, all the little pieces. You can put in little notes in the message box in ChatGPT, and I'm using ChatGPT 4.0, through OpenAI. And you put down, very little risk, or risk in terms of the leadership team, or IP risk, and you just put all these elements into the message box, and it will spit out a nice draft. So it will summarize the investment potential and key risk, assuming you put in the right information into the message box.
I would be curious, David, about the prompt that you would have to use and how long it would be. Are you pasting in the entire due diligence effort and then giving a prompt, or how are you handling it?
You can certainly do that, but some of these due diligence reports are like 10 to 12 pages, and that's a long prompt. So I would actually go through what I've done in the past, because the goal is to write a draft, and then you're going to look at it, is write the major essence. Is there a market? I go almost to your Berkus method. Is there a market, and is it growing? Do you have IP? Do you have good technology? Do you have a good technology team? What is the business model, and can you make money? Is there a strong leadership team? Can they execute well? And do we have a good deal structure and exit? So I actually come down to I break it down into writing the summary on those elements, and not getting into extraneous information. All the detail behind it, like you peel back the onion, would be on the individual blocks or the elements in the report.
Got it. That'll help. Okay, keep going.
All right. So leadership. Now, this one's a little problem. This one's an interesting one. Again, if I had you or Elon Musk as the CEO, I would probably say that's good enough. I can just eliminate most other things. But really, with leadership, you're evaluating the leadership, you're evaluating the CEO, the team, how have they worked together, have they been involved in this market space, what are the cultural biases, do they all acculturate well and work together well? You want to find trustworthiness, you want to check for negative histories, fraud. It's ChatGPT 4.0, as well as other AI systems, are not perfect in this. So I only can score the AI potential for doing leadership as a 5, sort of in the middle of the road, because there are nuances, and the interaction of soft skills are kind of hard to evaluate. So you have a question on that one?
I got it, and I do. I'm a little confused about 4.0 versus 4 little letter O. They are separate tracks on ChatGPT. Which one did you?
So I'm talking about 4 little letter O.
That's the one, and that is the way advanced one. Glad to see you doing that, David.
Yeah, I mean, sorry about that. Of course, in my system, it says 3.5, then it says GPT plus, and then it says 4.0, and then it says custom. I haven't figured out what custom is quite yet. But so anyway, so this one scores a 5. The next one is market assessment. And the things you want to ask ChatGPT: analyze the market size and growth for product A or service B in the United States, overseas, in Canada, or for millennials, or for old people, or for whatever. And then you can ask it to verify market sizes. You can ask it to verify the sources. And in this area, because there's a good database of information out there, you can search different databases and make a good analytical decision. So AI potential in this area is a 9. And in fact, you can use interns to help the due diligence team, because you can give them instructions on how to actually do the market assessment with GPT-4o.
I have to admit that I've never thought of that. And the idea of using ChatGPT to get that macro information is wonderful.
Yeah, and it works. We'll come back when we talk about competition, how that can be used as well. So let me go to the next one, which is product market fit. And this one is, we can ask GPT to assess the fit for company A's product in its target segment. So for example, we invested in a company called Limber Prosthetics. I can ask, how does Limber Prosthetics fit into the target market of below the knee amputations? And does it have a substantial good fit, and with what market? And I'll come back and say, veterans who want to get on their feet quickly, or senior citizens because the weight is lightweight. You can compare it with other products, and other market segments in which you're trying to target. You can ask what's unique about the product or the market served, or both. So in this case, it's very good, not perfect, because there are a lot of nuances, and there's always competition that comes in, or exogenous forces, but the AI potential score could be an 8.
Really interesting me in trying this. This really looks good. And the product market fit is always one where you have to do a lot of research. Great.
Yeah, that's the number 2, as you know better than I do, I think, because you've done some of the research on it. But product market fit after leadership is the most important criteria to make a good decision.
Yep.
So going on to 3, competition. Now, competition's kind of interesting. So you can ask ChatGPT, compare product A or company A to its 3 top competitors, evaluate and interpret their unique advantages. Now, there's a caveat. I scored it high. It's high, especially if you're building a better mousetrap, or if you're building a new to the a major line extension off what's existing today. It's not as good when you look at a new to the world product, which may not have a basis of understanding in the market today. That's a whole different world. So if I were developing quantum computing 10 years ago, I would probably not have a lot of people saying, yeah, that's really interesting. Or if I'm in the horse and buggy market and I wanted to do something better, and I say, I want to do this, it won't resonate because people don't have that perspective. So in this case, for competition, it's an 8. But you ask the questions, and as it comes back with answers, you can re-ask the question, well, tell me more about this. And I'll give you a quick example, which is interesting. And then I'll turn it over to you to ask some questions. When I was at Boeing, we were at Connection by Boeing, we were introducing the internet on the airplane, Wi-Fi on board. And we were the first to do that. Now, I always thought, I was head of marketing, that what we wanted to do is compete against the in-flight entertainment systems. When we got when we put the product on board and we asked customers what they're using it for, how they're using it, why aren't they using it, they said it's interrupting my eating and sleeping. So in a sense, we were not competing against IFE only. We were competing for their time. So and there's no way ChatGPT, regardless if it's 4.0 or 10.0, is going to pick those things, those nuances up. Therefore, it can't be scored a perfect 10.
You're reminding me that many of the entrepreneurs in young companies will say there is no competition. And if we can look it up this way and defeat that, it kind of makes a little pall over the other things the entrepreneur says.
Yeah, once a company says, if I could only get 1%, entrepreneur, if I could only get 1% of the market, or there's no competition, I don't think any of us are seriously thinking about investing. They're blinded.
Yeah, we've come a long way because we've been experienced and spanked. But
Oh,
that
yeah.
used to be something that we would hear and maybe believe because there were no ways that we could test it. So this is good.
So thanks for reminding me about all my problems in the past about being spanked for making wrong decisions.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Okay.
All right, technology and IP. This is an interesting one too, because you can ask questions of ChatGPT. What's the strength of the patent? Is the technology unique? Has the company and their leadership in the past ventures shown it can evolve its technology? You can even put in the patent and see how it relates. You can ask for the strength, but I would not rely totally on technology and IP, an input from ChatGPT or any of the AI systems to come up with the definitive answer. So this one, there's some nuances, and technology, as you know, is only one part of the answer. It has to do with the people, the process, the technology, and how the competition, what the competition is within that market. So you have to take this with a grain of salt. There are a lot of nuances, but it can give you some good insight.
One of those things that we always have to ask is, and we don't usually know, is what's the size of the data lake that it was used to train on? And if
Yeah.
it turns out to have been a massive data lake that included, for example, all the patent office materials going back to 1909, I would have a lot of faith. If it was just articles somebody had written about various patents, I would have very little faith. So it's something I'd like to test again too. You're getting into an area where I'm really interested in trying some of this.
Well, it'll get more interesting as I go through some other slides too. I can
Keep
guarantee
going.
you.
All
And
right.
by the way, just to let you know, I actually was looking at an investment in it was not NVIDIA, it was another company a few weeks ago, and I actually used ChatGPT to analyze, the investment. But it took a while because it was me interacting with the system to make sure I could refine my questions to get to a good answer, and it did a fairly good job. Based upon that analysis and my technical analysis, because I'm a technical trader, I actually bought the stock. Thankfully, it's up today because it would have
Yeah,
would
you
have
made the
not
right
been a good
decision, of
story.
course.
Yeah,
Did it make a recommendation to buy or make no recommendation, just give you information?
it actually, what it does is it confirmed my analysis and my process and indicated based upon what other analysts said that it is a good buy, and it told me the range. But I was using but it didn't have the same data sources that I use, which was concerning. It had different data sources.
Yes. I'm always happy when a robot tells me I did right.
Yeah. I,
Okay.
I'm not even going to comment on things like that. I'll get myself into trouble. The other area that I'm real concerned about, most of us angels, are the risk and impact. You can ask ChatGPT, assess the potential risks and impact on the business, on the market, on the competition. It can suggest mitigation plans. It can also suggest which competitor market space poses the highest risk, so you know where to focus. Again, not a perfect, it's not perfect for this. So therefore, I scored it a 6. It's better than flip of the coin, but you have to be able to ask the right questions. And this is an area where you almost have to do give and take. If you recall, we talked about risk impact in a prior podcast. So you go through all these risk elements. You'd almost have to break it down. Tell me the risk of devaluation of the dollar, or tell me the risk of manufacturing in China if that were an issue. And you'd have to break it down in subordinate parts.
This is good. First of all, we all know that early stage investing is risky. We know that half of those companies will be gone in an average of 4 years. And so de-risking is the thing that I focus on first, using the quality of the management team, the idea. So this is good. This risk impact analysis would be something I'd like to try and then compare it to what I do and see whether or not my very elementary method.
Well, that's something that maybe you and I can figure out. We can look at a company, and that's in the process. We'll cloak it, and we'll go through some of the analysis that we would do normally, and then we would do it on ChatGPT and report back to the group. Traction, easy. Can you validate? The answer is yes or no. If it's a company for starting pre-revenue or early revenue, this is a hard one to score. Therefore, the potential is only a 5. Much of the information is not available. but you can ask ChatGPT 4.0 to validate the revenue, grants, early trials. Maybe one of the early users can be a good reference for selling, and therefore you can ask, has this company done this before? Are they innovative companies, or are they laggards? So you can get some granularity on the traction, on the customers, and whether or not the beta or prototype is making sense. All right. So now we've talked about some of the really interesting aspects of looking at the market, looking at the product, looking at leadership, looking at some of the risks. But when it gets down to investing, we all know that it takes, it really is important to look at the business model and whether or not this will make money and when it will make money, and then what the exit is, because we only get our return when there's an event at the end. So this is the final part. We've now prepped everything, but now we're looking at what can we do to make sure this is a really good investment. So it could be a great business, but it may not be a good investment. The next several slides, and then we'll get into a general discussion, talk about whether or not this is a good investment. So how do we use ChatGPT 4.0 to do that? Okay?
Okay, I'm looking for this. Good.
All right. So we can take a look at the business model. The business model is how the startups make money and how they construct their functions internally and externally. You can ask GPT to outline and critique the business model of company A in market space B. You can ask about their revenue streams. You can ask about whether or not it's a SaaS product, or should there be other ways they can pursue revenue? What are their routes to revenue? Whether or not distribution makes sense or not. So I graded this one a 7 because it's a very complicated and non-linear type of a question that you have to ask, and it will require you to actually talk to ChatGPT.
Because you're talking now about the strategies, the vision of the company, the entire business model, which the entrepreneur has presented to you. You're trying to sometimes offer alternatives.
Yeah, so this one gets a little squirrely, but ChatGPT can help with your answer, or it can help guide you to ask different questions, be it to the LLM or even to the entrepreneur. So you can actually use a lot of the information, a lot of requests to go back to the entrepreneur and say, look, we have questions in this area. Here are some concerns. So that gets into the business model, which of course leads you to financial analysis. And this is where ChatGPT can actually help. I have been able to upload, for example, in the analysis I gave before about the stock I was looking at to buy. And I actually was able to upload a technical analysis graph, and it was able to analyze that graph. Well, in this case, you have a fairly standard pro forma P&L. So if you provide a financial summary, a pro forma for 5 years, you can ask, does this pro forma make sense? What are the metrics that you're seeing, and how does that compare to other similarly situated companies, other companies in the same market, or others that have the same product? Again, you can go back and forth, but this one you can actually benchmark. Therefore, this gives you a good potential score of 8. The more detailed and later stage the company is, it will give better results.
All right. I'm getting more and more interested in trying to use this. And your challenge about let's find a company and in the blind, try it both ways, is one that I want to pick up with you. So let's not forget that.
Okay, we'll come back to that, and let's go to market plans. Again, this is an area where ChatGPT can do real well. You provide input in the message box in ChatGPT, and it says, here's the market plans that company X is doing. Are these go-to-market plans realistic? Are the plans uniquely different than competitors A, B, and C? Remember, we just did the competitive analysis. What are the biggest risks in the plan, going back to risk and impact? And the more precise in defining the plans and the competition with detailed input, the go-to-market plan analysis would be more complete. Therefore, the score is at least an 8, could be higher, depending on how much information you provide.
I'm just thinking about the challenge now that I'm seeing all of these opportunities using AI. The challenge for you and me is we're going to take a company that maybe you've done all the due diligence on before and let you score it. And you show me the original materials, which would be the deck and the executive summary, and maybe some auxiliary materials, but not your due diligence. And I'll score it and you score it through AI, and we'll have a conversation online.
We may be able to do that live. It may take some interesting technical issues, but we can try. Certainly be a
Okay.
lot of fun. A couple of more slides, just the deal structure. This one, it's so variable and there's so many terms and conditions. You can ask ChatGPT to review the deal structure and terms. You can compare valuation with similar companies, and it's really good with that. You can look at benchmarking. I did have a problem when I went into it one time. I saw a convertible note and the terms did not look right to me. You know, after seeing a lot of these, you kind of say something is fishy in the state of Denmark here. And I found out that I asked ChatGPT, I said, hey, you know, can you review this? Does this make sense? And what does it mean in terms of not only the current convertibility, but in the future? And it came back with an answer. I said, I think your analysis is incorrect. I think you made a mistake. It came back and it said, whoops, I'm sorry, you are correct. So I started talking to it and admonishing it. It was I thought it was pretty funny. But the point is, you have to take all of this input with a grain of salt. Even all these AI systems say, do not believe it without doing some additional research. It's not 100% accurate. But that gives you at least some indication whether or not it works. And you can ask the exit potential. Again, not a perfect situation because it may look at it in a unique way depending on how it's trained on the LLMs. But you can evaluate exit strategies, whether or not it's realistic. It can look at companies that are in the M&A field that might buy your company. You can ask whether or not it has these companies will buy products or companies within this market space. You can discuss feasible EBITDA or multiple revenues on exit, and gives you some perspective on whether or not this is a good exit potential. So with that in mind, I now have in the last few slides, whether or not this is a good investment. It's a combination of a good business that's scalable, defined market, protected technology or protected business model in a sense, and then whether or not it's a good investment. If we invest today, given the funding that it will go through and the exit that it will eventually wind up in, whether or not that's a good investment from an angel point of view. So that's how I would look at AI. Not a perfect scenario. If I give it an overall score, it's probably somewhere between a 7 and an 8. It really depends on the product, the company, the stage of development, and then you just, use it as a guide at this point.
Early in the days of the angel groups, we were very much more subjective in our decision making. If we liked something, we would pile onto it, and sometimes with a lot of money. And now lately we've become very much more objective. And what you just presented is the next stage in objectivity. I'm sure as we go further on and we begin to see more sophisticated tools, this is going to be easier and easier. But it occurred to me as you were doing your last slide that I love to talk about exits with an entrepreneur even before we make an investment. And many times the entrepreneur will throw out a few names of companies we've never heard of. Sometimes they'll say, we'll get to that when, which is the wrong answer. But the problem is usually that we need to tie them down and decide whether or not we think this is a company that could get to an exit at some point in time. And so that leads into our discussions on Crossroads about exits. It leads into whether or not we can use these tools that you're talking about to help us better determine whether there is exit potential. I like it. So the challenge is on, David.
I'm working with a couple of my colleagues, at TCA to look at using AI, refining this process. There are also a couple of tools out there that are presumably AI-oriented tools to evaluate pitch decks. One is called pitchbob.io. Another one is called it's called pitchbob.io. I actually had them review a deal, a single pass that I was the deal lead on, and it was interesting. I can share that with you. There's also a tool called GoZigzag.com, which I think the entrepreneurs can use to help build a better pitch deck. And then there's Octane had a product called Haystacks, which was an AI-oriented product that determined whether or not there's additional funding for these companies based upon the pitch deck and their positioning and their marketing and the finances. So we're seeing AI come into play more and more. I think it will be a good adjunct, a good useful tool. I don't think it replaces the human brain at this point. At least I don't feel that you or I would be able to be replaced, because there's in AI, there's no BS meter. And some of our brains look at the BS meter.
But if we look at the past and the number of deals that we've seen all the way through the years that we've been involved in this and seen them, I've said to people often that I've seen at least 10,000 deals. I think you're getting to that point too.
Yeah.
And there is this, I've seen the movie before syndrome. And if we made an investment that failed and now we find another in a similar territory, we often aren't objective, because we often say, well, I had a little problem with that particular segment. AI might be able to help us overcome this if there's enough real data to give us information we need.
So with that as the last sentence, I think we have a wrap. This has been interesting. I hope other people enjoy this. And even if you're an entrepreneur, you can learn from it. Use AI to help you figure out your business model canvas. Use it to verify, validate, and check what you're telling us. And for the angel investor, use it as a guide. Use it as an adjunct. Use it as a tool, an assistant. And with that, I will catch up with you next time. A pleasure as usual. You all have a good evening.